So, Kal Kadosh Boker Tov, good morning. We're just going to continue. This is Eruvin, Masechet Eruvin Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, 3A1. We were speaking about the concept yesterday on Bet Amud Bet that we had a question that if we're comparing it to the Echal, we said, Lo tehani le'ar amaltera. It should not help an amaltera. Now remember, the amaltera was that on the top of the entrance of the Echal, you had pieces of wood. There were like different types of adornments that they used to have over there. So it says, the Echal amaltera havele. The Echal had this amaltera. Afilu hachi, and still, 20 amahu de gavoa. It was 20 amot gavoa. The Tanan was, we learned in the Mishnah, 5 amalterot shel milah hayu al gabav. There were 5 different amalterot of wood on top of the entrance of the Echal. Zol amalam mizo, zol amem mizo. So therefore, before the Gemara is going to finish, it says, V'hai mai tiyufta. What's the question? Dilma kitanya yid amalterot ba'ulam tani. Maybe those amalterot was only in the ulam and not in the Echal. So it says the Gemara, V'hai mai kushya. What's the question? Dilma tavnita Echal kedavnita ulam. Maybe it's the same. Meaning just like that you had the amalterot on the ulam, you also had it on the Echal. So lama amar Rabbi Elai amar Rav. So why did Rabbi Elai said the name Rav? V'chava arba'a. That if it was going to be thick, the width of 4 tfachim, afal pishen abriya, even though it's not going to be very hard, it's very strong. V'im yesh la amaltera, and if it does have the maltera, afilu gavoa yoter mesri mama, even if it's going to be above 20 amot, enot tzarich lamayet, you do not have to be mimayet, you don't have to minimize anything. So therefore, the question is, according to Shitat Rav, that you learn from the petach, from the entrance of the Echal, so you should have said that the maltera does not help to make it above 20 amot. 20 amot is the maximum. Just like over there, you had 20 amot, and it also had a maltera. So why is it that if you have a maltera, now it's going to help? So answers the Gemara, Rav Yosef says of Yosef, a maltera matnitahi. A maltera is actually the Mishnah. It's not the memra of Rav. It's not like a bright of Rav, but rather it's something else, nothing to do with it, and they put it with Rav. But really, Be'emet, Manktanila, who is the one that really taught it? Abai says, it was Chama, the son of Rabbi Baravua, he was the one that taught this, that he learned this, that if it has this amaltera, these beams on the top, remember, the amaltera was this. This is the amaltera. On top of the door, you have like different types of adornments. So he says, this amaltera, right, is going to be okay. So he says, this amaltera, he says, V'tavi amaltera matnita v'tikshu l'rav. So he says, the Gemara, fine. But still, you should say that this amaltera is going to be like a Mishnah. It's a question against Rav. So answers the Gemara, Amalech Rav, Rav is going to answer to you, Dal ana mehacha, right? He says, even if I'm going to keep quiet, matnita milo kashinadad, it's a stira in between the Mishnayot themselves. He says, why? He says, why? It's mashma that we learn it from the Echal. Now, according to this, amaltera shouldn't help. And in the Braita, it says that a maltera does help, even above 20. So what's going on? What are you going to say? It's Tanai, it's Machloket Tanaim. It's Tanai. So for me, it's also Machloket Tanaim. Meaning, according to Rav, the answers are very simple. He just says, listen, it's Machloket Tanaim, Machloket Tanaim. Gamanu, that's it. I hold like one Tana, the other one holds like the other Tana. So that's it. It's finished. There's no problem. It's Machloket Tanaim. Okay? So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, below Rav, even without Rav, matnaita hadadi lo kashian. If it wasn't for Rav, the Mishnah of the Braitot is not really a question and contradiction between them. The Rabbanan, according to the rabbis, Korah tamamai, what's the reasoning why by Korah, right, is this halacha? Mishum, because Hekeda, because you need a recognition, you need a Heker. He says, and that which we said more than the entrance of the Echal was for Simana Balma, was for a Siman that they shouldn't make a mistake that above the 20, it's going to be okay. But rather the maximum is going to be 20. But the reasoning of the 20 was for Heker, it was going to be for recognition. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Hanicha, this is going to be good. If he doesn't hold this of Rabbah. But if he does hold of this of Rabbah, the Amar Rabbah, but Rabbah says, you should know that I actually put them in a Sukkot. Ad 20 amah, Adam yodea shedav b'sukkah. Until 20 amah, a person knows that he's going to be in a sukkah. So it says over here that until 20 amot, a person knows that he's living in a sukkah. Because that's what it means, yedeu dorotechem. Lemala min 20 amah, above 20 amot, the person doesn't know because lo shalta be'ena, which means people do not look too high. Imagine right now we're talking about 10 meters. So if a person just walks into a place, he's not going to start going like this until he sees the ceiling. If it's too tall, it's too tall, that's it. You understand? He's not going to start looking. If it's too high, he's not going to pay attention. So he doesn't realize he's in a sukkah. Okay? Alma gabe sukkah, nami be kera pliga. So you see from here that also by sukkah, everything has to do with the kera, with the recognizable, with it's recognizable or not. If look betarte lamali, so why do you have to argue in two different things? Whether it is because of the sukkah or whether it is also because of this. So says the Gemara, you need both cases. Because if it was only written by sukkah, this is what Rabbi Yehuda was saying. Because since the sukkah is meant to sit down, so people would look up. But a mavui, the mavui was a thoroughfare. You're just walking through it. So people are not going to sit down and start looking at the roofs and looking what's going on. He's not going to pay attention. So now we would say that maybe you agree to the Rabbanan. Now if we're talking about in this place, and this is the rabbis were saying, but in the case of the sukkah, maybe they agreed to Rabbi Yehuda. So that's why we need both machlokot, meaning the exact same machlokot we had by sukkah and mavui, and we needed each one to teach you a different halacha. Okay, next says the Gemara. Okay. My amaltera. What exactly is a maltera? So says the Gemara, Rav Chama bered Rabba Baravu Amar, it's kineh. It's like kineh ofot. It's like a bird's nest. Okay, they used to come out. So Kiyata Rav Dini Amar Marava, they used to say paske de aza, the arza. There are big pieces of wood that was put for beauty. So they used to stick out these pieces of wood for beauty in front, on top of the echal, meaning on top of the entrance. They used to make these beautiful adornments. So Manda Amar, according to the one that says paske de arza kol shekin kineh, all the more so if it would just be these types of nests. But according to the Manda Amar kineh, which are the nests, maybe paske de arza lo, maybe it's not going to be good to be a recognition. Umanda Amar paske de arza, according to the Manda Amar that says it's pieces of wood. He says because, right, it's very, very long. So since it's very, very long, people pay attention to it. So says the Gemara, one second, but the sukkah is also very, very long. And still the rabbi said, no, that it doesn't help. So Ella, but rather, given the kachashiv, itlekala, but since you made it so important, it's got a kol. It's got like a recognizable thing that people, pay attention to it. Okay? Miksat korah betoch esrim, miksat korah lamana me'esrim. What happens if you have a little bit of the korah? Remember, the korah was the top beam. So a little bit was within the 20 amot and a little bit above the 20 amot. Or miksat schach, a little bit of the schach is below the 20 amot, a little bit of the schach is above the 20 amot. Samar Rabba says, b'mavui, it's going to be kosher. B'kasher. B'sukkah, it's going to be pasul. Ma'ishna mavui de kasher. Why is it that by mavui it's kasher? The amiran kilosh. Because we are going to say that it's the mavui is going to be kasher because we're going to say kilosh, which means bring it down a little bit. As if that we took it a little bit below, and therefore it's going to be okay. Sukkah nami, so say the same thing by the sukkah. Just say also dalal, which means kilosh, which means that we see as if that if you took it away, it wouldn't have been the 20 amot. So says the Gemara, if you would have taken away by the sukkah, so then so then you have much more sun than sel, much more sun than shade. Now we know that much more sun than shade is actually going to be disqualified. Hachanami, so to hear, if you're going to take it away, so then it's considered a korah, which is going to be moved by the wind, which means the korah has to be thick enough that the wind cannot make it move, cannot make it shake. So if you're going to take away that part of the korah, which is above the 20 amot, and then you're going to say it's kosher, so then it's going to be movable in the wind. It's not going to be a big beam anymore. Okay? So says the Gemara, right? But rather it has to be nasuka shiputim shel matechet. It's going to be made like shiputim shel matechet. Hachanam, so too here, it's going to be a which means we are looking at it as if that it's going to be pieces of metal. So too here, we're going to look at it as if to say that it's going to be more sun than shade. So Aman Rav in Parzakia, Sukkah dilachidhu lo midkan. The sukkah was made for one person, so it's not recognizable. Mavui de rabim mad keradade. But a mavui is made for the public. It's not made for an individual. Usually a sukkah is made for yourself. This is my sukkah for myself and my family. But a mavui is made for everybody. So because of that, he's saying, mid keradade, it's recognizable to everybody, and therefore it's going to be other halachot. Ravina comes and he says, sukkah is doraita, and that's why the rabbis were machminim. Mavui is the Rabbanan, so that's why they were not machminim. That's another answer that we answered already before, the difference between mavui and a sukkah. Ravada bar matna, matna shmat deraba ipcha. Ravada bar matna, he taught this bright the opposite way around. Amar Rabba says, the mavui is going to be pasul, and sukkah is going to be kosher. Maishna sukkah dikshera. Right? What's the reasoning why sukkah is going to be kosher? Damin and kilosh, because we're going to say you're going to take off the part which is above, which is pasul, and then that's it. So Mavui Nami say the same thing. So says the Gemara, if you're going to take it off, so then it's going to be considered like a korah, which is moved in the wind. If it's moved in the wind, it's not good. So says the Gemara the same thing. Hachanami say the same thing. If you're going to do the same thing by the sukkah, you're going to have more sun than shade. So but rather, right, we're going to say the opposite way around, that there's more shade than sun. So do the same thing. Say that it's like shikudim shel matechet, which means it's very, very heavy, and therefore there's no problem whatsoever by the mavui as well. So the exact opposite. Sukkah Sukkah is made for an individual. So Rami Navshe Umed Kastafa is going to remember about it. He says mavui, that it's made for the republic. Each one is going to rely on the other one, and they're not going to pay attention anymore. Because each one, when it's a public, I rely on you, you rely on him, yeah, and then everyone just relies on everyone, but it's not nobody doing anything. The Amni Inshib, people say, when you have pots which are owned by a lot of people, they never get hot and never get cold. Which means, this is, by the way, very, very important yesod, and this is true in many aspects, that many times when you have a few people involved, everyone relies on somebody else. Says, well, no, I thought that you were going to do it. Another one, no, I thought you were going to do it. And then it never got done. He's like, hey, well, what's going on? But that's the concept that people have to realize that. Ravina says, Sukkah is doraita, lo ba'echizuk. Sukkah is doraita, and therefore you don't have to strengthen yourself in it. Mavui is the Rabbanan, and that's why they were more strict in a Mavui than the doraita. So my havela, so what's bemet the psak then? So Rabba Ravula Amar, Zev Zev Pasul, both of them are Pasul. And Rava Amar, Rava says both of them are going to be kasher. Okay? Now, what's the reasoning why both of them are going to be kasher? Halal sukkah tnan, halal mavui tnan. Because we're talking about the halal of the sukkah and halal of the mavui, which means when we talk about 20 amot, we're talking about the 20 amot of the halal, of the empty space. That's what we're talking about. Therefore, that means as long as part of it came down, it's going to be kosher. Okay? This is Gimel Amud Bet now. Okay, so Amar le Rav Papa le Rava, says Rav Papa to Rava, Tanya de Misayel lecha, you've got a braita which is going to bring you a proof to you. Mavui shu gavoa me-20 amah. When you have a mavui which is going to be above 20 amot, yoter mipitcho shel echal, more than the entrance of the echal, yimayet, you have to minimize it. Okay, ve'echal gufo chalal 20. But the halal itself is going to be 20 amot. So Eitvei Rav Shimi Barav Ashi le Rav Papa asked Rav Shimi Barav Ashi to Rav Papa, Keitzad will say, how do you do it? So he says, Maniach Korah Misfat 20 ulmata. You put it at the edge of the 20 amot downwards. So Eima ulmana. So why do we say the opposite? Do it the edge of 20 and above. Why do you have to do it below? Just put above, because we already said as long as a little bit is below, it's going to be kosher. So says Gemara, Vehalamata Ktani. We learned about below. So Kamashbalan comes teach you the lamata is kilamala. Just like lamala chala esrim, above it's going to be 20. So to lamata lechala sarah has to be 10. It means it has to be 10 tvachim, right? At least from the ground as well, which means minimum has to have a 10, right? A 10 amot. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to buy Mishmed Rav Nachman. Says by the name of Nachman, Amat Sukkah, Amat Mavui, Be'ama bat Chamisha. Amat kilayim be'amat bat shisha. This is a very interesting Gemara, which basically says like this. They said in the name of the Nachman, Amat Sukkah, the Amma, when we're talking about the Sukkah, or the Amma Mavui, is always an Amma of 5 tfachim. Every single Amma, remember, an Amma is a handbreadth. This is an Amma, from here to here. This is an Amma. Right? Usually they do like this. This is an Amma. Okay, now every single Amma is made out of tfachim. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 tfachim by the Amat Sukkah and Amat Mavui. But when we're talking about Amat Kilayim, we're talking about Amat Bat Shisha. We're talking about 6 tfachim. Okay? Amat Mavui by Amat Bat Chamisha. Amat Mavui, we're talking about with an Amma of 5 tfachim. What are we talking about? Legovo ul pirtzat Mavui. We're talking about the height and for the Mavui in itself, the pirtzah, if let's say it's open. Okay? So, which means that like it's breached. So he says sometimes you have 4 amot and it's going to be lenient. So just like we taught by 4 tfachim, right? So that's one answer. That means it's like a mandamar that says it's 4 tfachim and not 4 amot. That's considered the shiur of what we're talking about, the pirtzah, when there's a breach that's going to make it a problem. If you want, you can answer it's barba amot. The rov amot kamar. It's 4 amot, but it has to be the majority of the 4 amot. Okay? Amat sukkah be'amat bat chamisha l'mayil chata. What is the difference? So remember, there's a big difference because every single amma, usually we talk about that it's 48 centimeters because every single tefach is 8 centimeters. So 8 times 6 is 48. But if you're going to tell me it's only going to be 5 tfachim, so now it becomes 8 times 5 is 40. So it changes all the ratios of numbers. Okay? Is Amat Sukkah be'amat bat chamisha l'may hilchta. What does it help now when you're telling me that the Amat Sukkah is Amma of 5 tfachim? For what? What do we need this for? So says the Gemara, legovha, for the gova, right, for the height, ul dofen akuman, for dofen akuma. Remember that when we're talking about dofen akuma, the dofen akuma is that if you've got schach pasul for 4 amot, it's going to, for more than 4 amot, so we look at it, and meaning less than 4 amot, it's going to become like a dofen. More than 4 amot, it becomes pasul. So we have to actually measure how much does it have, which means like this. I don't know if you've seen it, but in certain places, whether it's in Eretz Israel, in Toronto, even in Miami, sometimes it happens. For example, you're going to come and you're going to build your sukkah right against the wall. Now, on top of the wall, there's an overhang. That overhang technically should disqualify your sukkah. But what do we look at it? If it's going to be less than 4 amot, we look at it like a dofen akuma. We look at it, it's part of the wall. It's not part of the roof. It's part of the wall. Now, since it's part of the wall, you're not allowed to sit under it, but it does not disqualify your sukkah. So therefore, you have the wall, and then you have the overhang. That overhang on top, I look at it like a crooked wall. But now that has to be less than 4 amot. So now, if you're going to tell me now that every single amma is 6 tfachim, right? So then I have much more space. If you're going to tell me it's 5 tfachim, I lost on 4 amot. I already lost 4 tfachim. Yeah, which is 4 times 8, 32 centimeters. That's a big amount. You understand? Meaning that, it's important to know how much bemet we have. So says the Gemara, Ve'ika meshech sukkah be'arba amot delekula. Says 1 second, but what about the rest of the sukkah? That it's going to be 4 amot. We said there goes lekula. The time was learned in a brighter. Rabbi says, Omerani kol sukkah shen ba'arba al arba amot psula. Anything which is not 4 by 4 is going to be pasul. Remember, every 4 amot is 1.92 square feet. Okay? So he says, answers the Gemara, Kerabanan de Amri afilu ena machzek lo shover bo shulchan. No, he says, no. You don't need 4 by 4. You know what you need? You need a sukkah which is big enough for your head, majority of your body, and your table. That's all that you need. You don't need anything more than that. If you can answer another answer, the Olam Rebbe here, really be'emet it's Rebbe, the Rov Amot Kamar. We're talking about the majority of the Amot. The majority of the Amak Ketana, which means the majority of it. Okay? Fine. That means the majority of all the dinim are talking about that we're talking about the 20 Amot, the Dolal and Lechumra. We're talking about for the stringency. Okay? Now we're going to the next part, which was the Amat Kilayim. So it says the Gemara, Amat Kilayim ba'ama bat shisha l'mayil chata When we're talking about the amat kilayim, which is going to be for 6, right? What is halacha? Lekarachat hakarim v'limchol hakeren. We're talking about the karachat hakeren v'limchol hakeren. What is this talking about? The Gemara is going to explain. The Tanam, as we learned in the Mishnah. Mishnah says, karachat hakeren. We're talking about to plant grains. That Shammai says, amot. That if you have 24 amot, okay, that means if it doesn't have this, it's still because of kilayim. That Hillel says, 16 amot, it's 16 amot. Not 24, 16. Chol hakeren. What is the chol hakeren? To permit. That Shammai says you need 16 amot, and Hillel says 12 amot. What exactly are we talking about? Ezri karachat hakeren. What are we talking about? There's a picture here. This is karachat hakerem. Okay, that's karachat hakerem. And this is mechol hakerem. You see it?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So it says the Gemara. What does this mean exactly? Which one is? It says over here, right? What exactly is karachat hakerem? What do you mean karachat hakerem? Kerem shecharav emtzaito. The kerem that the middle part was completely like bald. Karachat is like a bald spot, meaning it was completely taken everything off. Okay, and only on the sides you had the gifanim. So en sham 16 amot. If you don't have 16 amot, lo yavi zera l'shem. You cannot put their grains to grow there. But if you did have 16 amot, noten lo kedei avodato. Give a space kedei avodat hakerem, which is around, right, to work it, and then you're allowed to come and you're allowed to plant the rest of it. What is mechol hakerem? The exact opposite. Ben kerem legader, between the kerem and the walls, right, between the vineyard and the walls, en sham 12 amot, you don't have 12 amot. So don't bring their seeds to plant. Hayushtam 12 amot, but if it did have 12 amot, you could put whatever you need to work around it, and then you could plant all the rest, which is around the walls. Okay? So says the Gemara, says, yeah, 1 second, but you have also 4, right, amot, which is also lekula. The Tanam, as we learned in the Mishnah, if you have a kerem, a vineyard, which is planted on less than 4 amot, right, which is between the different, areas, there's less than 4 amot. Rabbi Shimon says, eno kerem, it's not a kerem. And the rabbi said that it is a kerem. We look at the middle ones as if there's nothing there. So therefore, you see from here that this 4 amot is going the kula, not the chumrah. But it's like, you understand, which means that we're not going, we're talking about the 4 amot gedolot, and not the what we mentioned before, that every single amat kilayim was of 6, which is, even more. Right? Because if they're talking about that you needed a certain amount, and now you're going to tell me that each one needs 6, it means each one needs a bigger amount. So says the Gemara, it says you're going the kula. The Tanam, as we learned in the Mishnah, when you have a kerem which is planted on less than 4 amot, Rabbi Shimon says it's not a kerem. Chachamim say that it is a kerem. We look at the middle one, that it's nothing. So answers the Gemara, Kirabanan de Amri Yavi Kerem. We go like the rabbis that it is a kerem. If you could answer another answer. Le'olam, really be'emet, it's like Rabbi Shimon. The rov amot kama. And again, we're talking about the majority of the dinim. Not of you're always right that there's always going to be an exception to the rule, but it has to be the majority. So the majority of the rules, this is what there is. But Rav Mishmed Rav Nachman Amar, Rav says the name of Nachman, Kol amot be'amah bat shisha. All amot are always 6 tvachim. Ela lalu shochakot ve'lalu atzivot. Some of them are sochakot, which means bigger, and one of them are smaller. Meaning, according to him, it's always 6. You're going to ask someone, how much is an amah? Always 6. The only difference is, are they bigger or smaller? That means there's the 6 which are big, and then there's 6 which are small. Okay? So therefore, he says, that's what we're talking about. Sochakot is the bigger ones, right? Just like a person that's opening up his mouth when he's laughing. He's, right? It's bigger. He says, but the other one is atzivot when a person's sad. So there's, it's smaller. Mitzumtzam. Okay? So matveis, we're going to ask the following question. As long as it's not going to be mechuvanot, as long as it's going to be exactly, this is good according to Rava, this is Dalad Amud Aleph. Sometimes you have sochakot, sometimes you have batzavot. But according to Abaye, you're going to have a question, and then we're going to continue tomorrow with the answer about the shisha and everything.